Well, for all of our participants, as you can notice, we've had some wonderful takeaways so far, and now we will be joined by our next speaker as well. But one thing I definitely want to mention is that I think there's been some kind of a tech error, so we're just trying to work that out. But please don't worry. All the participants who are logged on, we've also sent out an important information for all of you, is to visit the etinsights.com to access the snippets and videos from today's event and much more. And please don't go anywhere because we'll also have Mr. Ritesh Agarwal joining us in a short while. And on that note, we're going to request you to please hold on. Meanwhile, we also hope you're filling in all those tweets, all the takeaways from our session so far, getting those tweets coming using hashtag ETGBS and hashtag ETUnwired. Now, I do know for sure that when I used to host a conference offline, that is in the mighty presence of all you participants, if there was some kind of a delay, I could just quickly come up with an activity or probably share a little more insights. But here, thanks to technology, we've all come together. But while we wait for our next speaker to join in, I'm just going to request you to hold on and be with us for just a minute or two. But meanwhile, I'm going to urge you all to also keep those tweets coming using hashtag ETGBS. And up next, of course, we'll have Ritesh Agarwal. I'm sure all of you are pretty keen to also hear from him as to how it is in terms of when we talk about the disruptive industry of the hospitality sector, for that matter. I think he's online. Yes, I can see that his video is on. So yes, that's right. I've got information from my team that he's logged in. Hi, Ritesh. Good evening. Am I audible? Okay, so I'm audible, right? Okay, Ritesh, I believe you also logged in. That's awesome. So yes, participants, it's now time to actually hear from the very dynamic entrepreneur, a very enthusiastic entrepreneur as well. And one thing I know for sure is that when we talk about tourism or the hospitality industry, in a situation like this, in a crisis like this, I think we've often wondered, how is the hospitality industry reacting or responding? So let's get some insights from the dynamic entrepreneur himself, Ritesh. Thank you so much once again for joining us at the Global Business Summit, albeit a virtual summit. So thank you once again, and over to you.
Thank you so much for all the kind work and setting this together. I think this is a unique opportunity for all of us to be able to look at each one of the great opportunities that used to exist earlier, like that of the GBS, and ask ourselves, if it in a normal day would have said that let's try and have this as an e-summit, almost everybody around the table would have looked at it and said, bad idea, can't do it. But today, given we got no choice, I think almost everything feels like can happen virtually, which is of course quite an interesting perspective. To begin with, thank you so much everybody for joining us here. This has been a fantastic day of sessions. I had the good opportunity to listen to a few sessions, of course, starting with Mr. Murthy's fantastic session. I really enjoyed the talk and how interestingly YouTube is managing with the current crisis and their response to the COVID-19. I think today we have an opportunity to talk from the perspective of how do we go towards this perspective of what would be the new rules of business going forward post the COVID-19. One of the things that we've recently heard about in various newspaper interviews and so on is that there was world pre-COVID and there was world after COVID, and these two will never be the same again. The way people operated before COVID will be fundamentally different for consumers, for partners, for vendors, for employees, for stakeholders. Everybody around us will need to operate in a manner which is different from the way they operated pre-COVID. And a lot of times when we started looking at comparatives about how COVID will impact the world, more often than not, people would bring SARS maps and say, when SARS happened, here is how people reacted. One other important thing that's very important to know is that there is no precedence of the size of impact COVID has become in the past. For example, the total number of cases that came in because of SARS worldwide probably in a day would have been a few hundred. more than a few hundred are being currently registered in India per day. So the size of impact that COVID-19 has is probably unprecedented and something that people have never, sort of been able to figure out earlier, and hence something that we want to prepare for at a very significant amount of scale. Let me begin my session today by talking about the kind of impact COVID-19 has for hospitality and the travel industry. If there is any industry that is more impacted at this point of time, I think I can't imagine of any other industry other than hospitality and travel that is more impacted. The one running competition that I've heard on few of the news channels has been movie industry versus travel industry, where people say that the movie industry is more impacted than the travel industry. But honestly, both of these industries are very significantly impacted right now. Given this massive amount of impact, that people would be genuinely worried of being able to get out of their houses in the current world, how do hospitality and travel industry, and frankly any industry where going out of home is required, how do those businesses look at a situation like this is what I will cover to begin with. I will follow that with some kind of context about how does how have various companies been able to respond to the crisis so far, and I will end with the perspective of saying how do various constituents of the current industry prepare for a world which will remain post COVID for a long enough period of time. Let me begin with the first part, which is how have various industries been impacted around travel and hospitality and various companies, and how are they preparing to respond? To begin with, I think the people who set the tone of what global travel and hospitality industry impact was, if you may remember, one of the viral videos of Arnie at Marriott was that sort of really what set the initial perspective of how hard the travel and the hospitality industry was impacted. Arnie at Marriott is, of course, one of the stars in the industry, somebody who's inspired hundreds of hospitality CEOs, if not thousands, and I'm, of course, one of them. And in that perspective, what was clear was consumers' fear of being able to travel was a reasonably large problem, but it was followed through by means of significant amount of worry, which various governments responded to in the form of lockdowns, which is absolutely the right thing to do in order to ensure that people are safe, which is the single highest priority for every industry leader in today's time frame. As that has happened, after COVID world, as and when the openings are there, consumers will care about three most important things. The first is cleanliness and hygiene. Number two is social distancing. And number three, which is probably one of the most important of the three, is the ability to ensure that by means of PPEs and various other protective equipments, even the handmade masks, how can people save themselves and keep themselves safe at times when they're traveling? I think given that, one of the things that I believe in the travel and hospitality industry, and at length in every segment, even if you have a hair salon or if you have a business wherein you see people coming into your shop, or a physical experience, I think one of the things that will become extremely critical is the ability to make sure that can you bring sanitization and hygiene for something which ensures that consumers know that who came before them and who comes after them will be taken care of. The second is making sure that social distancing will be followed, so zero touch SOPs. For example, here at Oyo and various other hotel companies, I'm hearing that people are designing experiences which do not require touch at any part of the experience. And third, and probably one of the most important, is making sure that beyond hygiene and social distancing, people also use handmade masks and various products in that in that order. Related to this is the next question of saying that if that be so, how are various segments impacted and how are they going to make decisions in the coming world? Let me begin by talking about how consumers, as of the earliest results we are seeing, in terms of impact, are seeing the overall outcome. I think increasingly from what we're seeing from consumers across the world in countries where lockdowns have opened with the silver lining and the early openings, we are seeing consumers being focused on one, very essential travel. Second, people don't want frequent travel. So, for example, if earlier people would have traveled to Bangalore for 4 days a week, as and when the lockdowns open, we are seeing that people are saying, I would rather be in Bangalore for 10 to 15 days, finish my work, and then at the same time ensure that we are able to get the best kind of project done and come back rather than be there in another city very frequently every few days in terms of existence. Due to which we are seeing medium and long term stays becoming a large opportunity worldwide. I was reading recently that some of the global leading travel platforms are focusing a lot more on long stays slash medium term stays as an opportunity. The second silver lining is increasingly how can hospitality industry serve the country and serve various countries across the world in this time. Oyo was among the earliest to be able to try and go out and support people in these incredibly tough times. In the United States, we were appreciated by various White House briefings about our ability to support the frontliners. And then in India was the second or one of the earliest countries we announced, and we announced this in various countries across the world, including the latest in Japan. We are seeing tens of thousands of people. Actually, in the United States, we've got recent data that over 100,000 people in these countries were first responders, medical professionals, army people, safety and security people across the world are able to get clean, comfortable spaces without the worry of having to go back to home in these really tough times. The third thing that we've been able to see the industry sort of respond with is the ability of ensuring that various places, hotels are able to act as a suraksha kavach before the hospital itself. So we have seen worldwide that there are additional hotel units which are separate and not the places where other customers stay, have become places where consumers who are asymptomatic or people are trying to find out whether they are completely comfortable or not and do not have a reasonable space, especially in houses where there are five, six, seven people living in a room, to get a clean, comfortable space to live in. And I think there's a partnership that we've set up with Apollo and various other companies across the world have set together, which are enabling sort of a suraksha coverage of sorts. And in our partnership specifically, I'm thankful to Apollo to almost fund the entire fee for people who come with limited resources and cannot afford to have home quarantine for themselves. And the fourth is very interesting as well, where I have seen worldwide the sense of people respecting guests as their gods have increased more than ever before. Because across the world, tourists, business professionals have been stranded given today's world. And I have seen, at least we have been able to speak to over 20 embassies and hotel companies across the world are engaging with tens of embassies across the world in order to ensure that the foreign nationals in other countries or multi-state nationals who are stuck in another city are given the due care. And I would extend the argument to what various hotel companies are doing also by means of stranded, immigrant laborers and enabling them accommodation. And the stories of them getting accommodation in various kind of places, including one of the stories that I read recently where immigrant laborers were staying at houses and at schools and painting those schools in a way of them giving respect for the support have been very heartwarming. Let me talk about the second segment involved in hospitality, which is the little businesses. In the last 10 to 15 years across the world, there has been a huge surge in people traveling for business, holiday, and so on. And small businesses have been able to ensure that they have been able to use this exciting opportunity to set this small vacation home, small guest house, hotel, and so on and so forth in today's world to be able to manage the demand for consumers travel. The COVID-19 impact, if it is hard for companies like us, it is disastrous for these little businesses. And hence, it is critical that all of us try and support these little businesses in every manner possible. There are five suggestions I would make. The first is, if any one of you stayed in that little guest house or a little homestay or a small business, either through Oyo, Airbnb, or any of the platforms, and you liked the experience, please use this opportunity when you're at home to give them some few good reviews. If you genuinely felt that those experiences were good and you missed out from giving a review in the past, that will help the small property owner who's deserving get more business when the world opens. Number two is try and help the small business people by ensuring that you support the small business person by a holiday in a driving vacation as and when the lockdowns come out. The world is going to be scared to travel by flights. But even if you're able to help the person who's closer by your house or closer by your city, they could have great advantage given this program. Governments across the world have come out with small business loan products. Please let only the small businesses get benefit of it. And if you're big businesses, especially in countries like United States and others, please let the benefit be taken by the small business person before anybody else. Number three is, how does the world prepare for a world in which human social distancing and the ability of ensuring that humans are not close to each other is a norm of the day? Technology will take center stage. We believe genuinely for the first time, all the technologies that have been postponed for a long time in all of our industries will start becoming core to decisions. For instance, is there an opportunity where housekeeping can be semi-automatic? There have been cleaning options available by means of machines for a long time, but people haven't afforded to invest on that. Or, for instance, can check-ins be genuinely automated? Can people get housekeeping room service by means of having no touch requirements going forward? A lot of these perspectives, by means of using technology, will become critical. And I believe no touch check in and check out, no touch room servicing, and no touch experiences in every format where human touch was earlier required will fundamentally change in the times to come. As some of you may have seen, that Oyo, of course, is very significantly impacted given the COVID-19 situation. But I'm thankful to Oyopreneurs across the world who are prepping to ensure that we fight this crisis, respond to this crisis in a manner which ensures that we are all in it together, and at the same time we come back in a world where each one of the entrepreneurs can come back together and create the one big opportunity that we all started, the aspiration of an Indian company to create a leading high quality consumer experiences at low prices across the world. And last but not the least, I'm very thankful to not just our Oyopreneurs, but the hundreds of thousands of people working at Oyo hotels across the world, the small hotel owners, and the tens of thousands of customers and hundreds of thousands of customers across the world who still continue to choose us as some parts of the world continue to show signs of opening up as we speak. Uh, I'll end by saying it will be hard. It's not going to be something that we all like, but the new rules of COVID-19 will ensure that entrepreneurs who are able to prepare and be able to appreciate the new world will create businesses of whole new formats in this world. And crisis is a big challenge, but maybe a big opportunity for another young business person listening to me out there wanting to build their new business going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ritesh. There was so much of empathy in what you shared, actually, and even in terms of focusing towards the small business owners, or for that matter, the technology that was probably delayed, how much the focus will go back towards technology, and a lot more in all that you've shared. We managed to get some questions from the attendees, so I'm just going to quickly share those questions with you. First up is that will there be a new standard of certification post COVID-19 for hygiene?
Absolutely. There will be a new standard of hygiene going forward. and a new standard of hygiene in every part of the touch point, which means that people would know that not just using hospital grade materials for cleaning is required, but also the cleaner itself who got involved in the whole cleaning experience. What training and what kind of projects did they ensure before you came in into the hotel, and after you will leave the hotel will be ensured. So I believe there will be a new standard of cleaning, and we here at Oyo are also working to hopefully be one of the one of the companies who try to make some kind of a positive difference. We will be coming up with a tag called "Sanitized by Oyo" tag on all of our hotels after each one of them have gone through various levels of cleaning, which are hospital grade, hopefully in the times to come.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful indeed. That also brings me to the next question. Will we get to see companies across hospitality sectors forming partnerships to ensure business continuity?
तो in Hindi they say मुश्किल वक्त में दोस्ती और दुश्मनी लोग भूल जाते हैं. So these are the times when we are all in it together. So there are various hospitality and travel groups in which we are all working together as to how do we enable the best interest for the small business people, the small agents, and various other folks, and more importantly, how do we set standards together so that way we can all enable at least a basic level of hygiene, cleanliness, and social distancing, which ensures that consumers are not worried about traveling. Once consumers are willing to travel, is when one hotel chain versus other can discuss who gets a customer. But the number one priority is, suraksha based hotels is one of the top priority of our industry. Once consumers know that their travel is surakshit, I think the right the which specific company they want to choose is their choice, of course.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful there. So we'll stick to the hospitality bit only, but as we all know that it's a very staff intensive sector. So what kind of workforce changes do you see in the future?
So clearly, I think in the hotels, you will see that hotels will need to start by designing themselves with basic amount of staffing because of two reasons. The first one is, like I mentioned, about people would want to avoid being very close or having touch experiences and so on. And second, and more importantly, having more people at the lobby or the corridor or things like that increases the risk of any kind of challenges. So I believe there are three things that will happen. One, the requirement of ensuring that each of the staff and people around them who have ever come in contact with them have never had any symptoms will be very important, due to which you will see that Arogya Setu app and similar requirements will become mandatory. For example, Zomato just made it mandatory for all the delivery boys to have the Arogya Setu app with themselves so that people know who are the people in the hotel. Second is ensuring that they're trained to have social distancing. And third, which is most important, is their PPEs, while they should still smile, their smile does not need to be visible. It's okay for that to be behind the masks and the gloves, but in everything they do, there needs to be a sense of them smiling and wanting to serve the customer in the best manner possible.
All right, so then that brings me to the last question. I think we've got one more in the chat from the attendees. Dear Ritesh, it was a very good insight. As you said about the no human touch policy, then what about amenities such as swimming pools and gyms?
Absolutely. I think any of the social amenities which are going to be crowded, it will be longer before people start using them. And again, I think at the right period when people consider opening, social activities like swimming pool or gym, where there are multiple people using these services, it would be important in some form or the other to be able to know two things. One, is it in a city which is green, which means that if there is no cases of COVID in your cities, the chances of being able to open up services like this will grow. Or second, which is being able to use Arogya Setu and various other products to be able to preempt that only the people who have the zero or the lowest risk are the ones using these services. But until then, I've been seeing that CureFit has a fantastic digital program for gymming. Please gym at home and stay home and stay safe.
That was a wonderful parting note, I must admit. In fact, it's wonderful to see how people are actually working out at home, at the comfort of their home, for that matter, working. Of course, swimming pools, yes, we will be getting there a little later, though. But I must thank you, Ritesh, because the clarity in your perspectives and the way you've shared your insights with us. Most importantly, the empathy bit. That's something we really need in this kind of situation that we are in. So, thank you so much for joining us at the Global Business Summit, the virtual summit. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. So, yes, participants, with that, I just thought I'll also quickly share a quick announcement with all of you. First up, I really do hope all of you managed to get some wonderful takeaways